I'm here to talk about my Democratic colleagues and the extent to which the American people need to understand they break it, you buy it. And that's the reality of what's happening. My Democratic colleagues are breaking this country, breaking up your families, breaking up our secure border, breaking up our military, breaking up our court systems, the rule of law, breaking up our police, our law enforcement community. They're breaking up our economy, breaking the strength of the American dollar. They're breaking our position in the world, and they're breaking this body, the people's house. And it's high time it stop. And we can only hope that in November we get a change so that we can stop it. And then my message to my Republican colleagues is we better stop it. Because what's happening in the so-called people's house cannot be tolerated any longer. They break it. This body, the leadership of this country, they break it. You buy it. In reverse, I would say America is great. Washington is broken. They're breaking it every day. And as a result, they're breaking this great country that our forefathers fought so hard to give to us and to our children and our grandchildren. You cannot defend the policies of the Democratic majority. It's impossible to do. And in fact, if you set out to harm the United States of America, I would defy someone to demonstrate to me how you could do better than my Democratic colleagues are doing on a daily basis, ripping apart the Constitution, ripping apart the shreds of the flag, ripping apart the people of this country, dividing us by race, dividing us by income, dividing us by our adherence to the Constitution or devotion to the border, or devotion to the rule of law. That's what's happening on a daily basis, and it's purposeful. Let's be perfectly clear that it's purposeful. The reason my Democratic colleagues focus so intently on January 6th is they want to divide us. The reason they want to have race-based policies throughout our government is they want to divide us. The reason they want to make the border be supposedly about not liking brown people is because they want to divide us. Never mind that South Texas is full of brown people who are sick of wide open borders, empowering cartels. That's the reality of what's going on in this chamber and in the Senate and at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's just focus on the border for a minute. Broken, wide open, abused by cartels, exploited by terrorists, exploited by gang members, criminals coming into our country, killing American citizens, fentanyl pouring into our communities, 107,000 dead Americans, 850,000 known gotaways pouring in between the ports of entry because our Border Patrol are overwhelmed with not only no support from this administration, but the purposeful attack by the Secretary of Homeland Security lying about the good men and women of Border Patrol, saying that they whipped people that they didn't, and then hiding behind some report while they give them an administrative punishment. That is your leadership, ladies and gentlemen. They are breaking it, and you have to buy it. They are leaving our border wide open, and American citizens are dying. Let me repeat that. They are leaving our border wide open, broken, and the American people are dying. Thousands upon thousands of Americans dying from fentanyl pouring into our communities, pushed by China, exploited by cartels, left to be able to come into our country because Democrats do not care about securing the border. And more importantly, my Democratic colleagues are perfectly fine purposely leaving our border wide open. It's purposeful. It's purposeful. They are breaking it, and you're going to have to buy it. How about our defense? Our Defense Department is being broken on a daily basis by my colleagues on their side of the aisle and in the other chamber, and particularly this administration, shoving into the Department of Defense a radical woke ideology, radical woke programs, policies focused on diversity and equity and inclusion, all of the things that they cloak with a critical race theory to destroy and break apart the institution of our defense. It's purposeful. Vaccine mandates, forcing 60,000 guardsmen to be on the chopping block to lose their entire career. It is purposeful. They're breaking it. They're breaking that military you love. They're breaking that Department of Defense that needs to be there on that wall defending us. They're breaking it. They're breaking it by tucking tail and running out of Afghanistan with $85 billion of equipment there and 12 or 13 dead service members and no accountability. No accountability for the brass at the Pentagon and no accountability so far at the White House for tucking tail and running. They're breaking our Defense Department. You talk to the service members who are in my office coming in tears because they're about to lose their entire career because they choose not to take a politicized vaccine. Oh, by the way, by another broken governmental agency or agencies, our whole public health system being radicalized by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to strike fear in the hearts of the American people, to watch them push aside and brush under the rug gain-of-function research and all that we see unfolding in China and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, all that we know about the funding, American funding that was tied to that, all that we know about the absurdity of locking down schools, shutting down our schools so our kids are stuck in masks, stuck in the corner and not able to go to school, the damage it has done to our kids, the mental health issues, destroying the education of our young, all chasing the teachers' unions. We've seen the mandatory or efforts at mandatory vaccines, thankfully partially struck aside, but many still in place, breaking the back of the people's trust in their public health, breaking the back of the people's ability to serve in the military and defend this country, breaking the back of people being able to be federal public servants working for Border Patrol or other federal agencies. Why? Because of fealty to Anthony Fauci being the great wizard of public health while he poses for magazine covers and throws out pitches at baseball games. Meanwhile, your defense is broken, your public health is broken, and you're going to have to buy it. How about crime on the streets of the United States of America? How about the 12 Democrat-run cities that have called for defunding their police and have seen skyrocketing crime enveloping the cities? The business owner I spoke to today in Baltimore who says he's going to have to shut down his franchise because of crime rampant in Baltimore. Austin, Texas, which cut its police by a third and have seen homicides skyrocket from 59 to 89, have seen 911 calls unanswered. Drug trafficking increasing, taking police off the streets in Austin, Texas. We've seen 50 of the biggest urban areas see a 5% decrease in their police budgets, while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say they're doing no such thing. But my friend Mr. Johnson rattled off quote after quote after quote in the House Judiciary Committee of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle calling for defunding of the police. Of course it's an attack on our police. They're breaking our police departments, breaking the back of our men and women in blue, and leaving our streets exposed to lawlessness and danger. And it's purposeful. How about energy? Could you take a more ridiculous position than to take the strength of national security, of having abundant oil and gas, the ability to lead on nuclear, and instead chase unicorn energy policies of nothing but solar and wind, so that on a cloudless, windless day, or cloudy, windless day, you sit back and watch your energy plummet and your grid weaken? What kind of a country's leadership does that to its people? I'd say the kind that want to break it. I'd say the kind that want to chase the fairy tales and the unicorn energy policies that this administration wants to pursue. We could have nuclear power. Doesn't create any carbon dioxide. Do my colleagues on their side of the aisle want to do that? No. Because this is about fear. This is about breaking American energy. This is about breaking the back of it so you can get on your private plane and fly to Davos and fit in with the Western Europeans and how great they are while they're now burning wood to heat their homes. We had the greatest national security asset you could possibly imagine, which was full and complete energy independence, and we're completely flushing it down the toilet to break it, and to break it purposefully. And we don't have to do it. We have abundant energy, abundant clean burning natural gas that we could export to other countries as we were doing, driving down carbon dioxide. We could be producing nuclear facilities all across this country with zero CO2 production, but we're not. Instead, we're we're tilting at windmills, dotting the landscape with windmills. We had a couple of weeks ago in Texas where we had 8% of the wind capacity available in our grid. Absolutely astounding of what we're doing to the energy of the United States of America. Inflation. I mean, I can't even get all this in. The absurd policies of Democrats. I've already covered border, could go further. Already talked about defense, could go further. Didn't even get into Ukraine and the lack of briefings and the $56 billion we just dumped into Ukraine with zero indication of a strategy of what we're actually going to do, while we expand NATO with zero indication about how that's going to impact Article 5 and an 800-mile border and whether NATO is going to upend its end of the bargain when we fund the vast majority of NATO. I didn't even talk about that part of defense. I didn't talk about crime. I mean, I talked about crime, but I didn't get into every aspect of it. I didn't get into every aspect of energy. Now we're talking about inflation. The wisdom of this administration coming in and dumping $1.9 trillion. I don't even remember what the name of that ridiculous bill was, but it was garbage. And it's now driving up the cost of goods and services for you, the American people. They're breaking it. They're breaking your jobs. They're breaking your income. They're breaking your ability to buy goods and services. And you're literally going to have to buy it, and you're going to have to pay a lot for it. Because they're spending money we don't have. They're printing money, throwing it out in the economy, driving up the prices of goods, while they're simultaneously restricting the ability for us to develop energy, to have abundant energy that you can afford. You like $4.50 gasoline? Well, guess what? Your Democratic leadership just defended that as being great. In a rules committee debate this week, when I sat in that room debating the rules, literally the Democratic Rules Committee was talking about how great it is that the price of oil has come down, quote unquote. And they talk about the price of copper going down. Well, I've spent a lot of money on copper to wire my home. It's expensive as heck. It's now locked up in cages. But do you know what the price of copper going down means? Heading into a recession. That's the reality of what we're facing. That's the truth. Our economy is getting ripped to shreds. Price of goods and services are going up. And it's purposeful. Spending money we don't have. How can you justify spending $2 trillion, printing that money, and dumping it out there to drive up the price of goods and services while cutting off the production of oil and gas, not developing nuclear, increasing the price of gasoline, increasing the price of energy in your homes? It could only be purposeful. They're breaking it. They want to break it so they can live in unicorn land. But you're going to have to buy it, and it's going to be expensive. How about the state of the rule of law? How about the state of the family? How about the state of marriage? Just yesterday on this floor, we passed a law to force recognition by one state of another state's marriage, but by thereby doing that, for the first time, I think this body, certainly members on this side, supporting the redefinition of marriage, which was manufactured by the 2015 Supreme Court decision, manufactured and forced upon the states a redefinition of marriage. Now you see the wailing and gnashing of teeth because this court dared to say that Roe versus Wade was bad law and that we should defer to the states in the protection of life and the recognition that that is the appropriate law under the Constitution. And lastly, I would point out, we're talking about breaking it, this body is the best example of my Democratic colleagues not giving a whit about you, the people, rolling over and destroying the people's house. Destroying this institution. I have not been able to offer an amendment on the floor of this body. Can't do it. Got to go to rules, beg for crumbs. They drive through so-called suspension of the rules bills. We get them off in hours, at most a day or two before they're on the floor, being asked to be voice voted. And if we don't have a group of us on the floor monitoring those bills, they will go through without a vote. They don't care, because voting doesn't matter, as evidenced by proxy voting. Forcing a new rule that says you can turn your voting card that you, the voters, gave to representatives and give that to another member of Congress, upending the constitutional order, which requires presence, a quorum, physical presence, debate. That is what the Constitution contemplates. And it is my Democratic colleagues who, for the first time in history, upended our requirement that we be present in the body of the House of Representatives to do our job. Blowing apart this people's house. And I will note, as I often do, that I'm not saying that everybody on this side of the aisle has clean hands on all of these points. A lot of Republicans are taking advantage of the proxy voting that my Democratic colleagues created for the first time in history. They should not. I'll say that to every member. I don't care if they're Freedom Caucus leadership or anybody in between. I will not back away from saying proxy voting is not only unconstitutional, it's wrong, and it's destroying this body. Forced magnetometers in this false name of security. Masks being forced upon members of Congress on the floor of the House, which have now been brushed aside because I guess Anthony Fauci or somebody decreed that somehow it's now safe to walk around without masks until they say it's not safe. I will yield to my friend from Virginia here in 1 second. I just want to say in conclusion to this part, and then I want to engage with my friend, my Democratic colleagues, unfortunately with a little bit of help with a few of my Republican colleagues on occasion, are breaking this country. They are breaking this body. They are breaking our Constitution, and it is purposeful. There are no other words to say what's happening at our border but that it's purposeful. There are no other words to say about what's happening on our streets and our law enforcement but that it's purposeful. There's no other thing you can say about our energy policies but that it's purposeful. There's no other thing you can say about the spending and the inflation than that it's purposeful. The attack on the institution of marriage, the breakdown of the family, the targeting and the policies against life, but that it's purposeful. The fact that we are destroying this body with proxy voting, that it's purposeful. The fact that we're destroying the Defense Department and the very core values of our men and women in military with their woke policies, with their vax mandates, irrespective of what that does to defense, driving our recruiting down to unforeseen levels, but that it's purposeful. And it's wrong. And I would just challenge my Republican colleagues that we better come in, if the American people give us power in November, and do the right thing to protect this country and to stop breaking it, because the American people are having to buy it. And with that, I'm going to yield to my friend from Virginia.
Thank you, the gentleman from Texas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had a constituent say to me from Bedford County, just outside Lynchburg where I live, nothing this president and this majority in Congress is doing makes sense unless they hate the country. Nothing they're doing makes sense unless they hate the country. What would you do differently over the last year and a half if it was your purpose, your desire, your intention to ruin the country? Maybe you would undermine police. Maybe you would reduce funding for police. Maybe you would stop arresting violent criminals. Maybe you would stop prosecuting violent crimes. Maybe you would allow violent criminals to have no cash bail. Maybe you would release violent criminals from our prisons. And you know what? All of those things happening, the Democrats seem surprised that crime has went up across the country. Violent crime is up some 30% in the last year across the country. American cities, unrecognizable. People don't want to go there anymore because of these policies. Maybe the American people don't want 4 million illegal aliens coming into the interior of their country in the past year and a half. Maybe when we have a shortage of funding to take care of Americans, to do things that we'd like to do, to take care of our veterans, to take care of those most in need, to help our farmers, to help hardworking Americans, to maybe give them a little bit of their resources back, to reduce the regulations and the oppression upon them, maybe we don't need to bring in 4 million illegal aliens in a year and a half, 10,000 a day now the average is. Give them free social services, free health care, free education, free travel. with no requirement to even appear in court. Maybe the American people want their border secured. Maybe the American people don't want massive inflation, 40-year record inflation, caused primarily by the massive spending, the reckless spending, and then the energy policies. Think about where we might be if this Democrat majority had gotten their $6 trillion Build Back Bankrupt bill through Congress. $20,000 per American citizen. They like to say sometimes, oh, some of this stuff's popular, it polls well. People want this. $6 trillion is what they've tried to spend. And they're still trying to backdoor it in over these remaining months that they may have power. How would it poll, do you think, if we said, American citizen, do you want this so-called benefit, this so-called perk, what have you, but your share of the cost is $20,000. So a family of 3, your share is $60,000. How many would vote for these policies? Not to mention what they're doing on energy, by design, on purpose, the dishonest attack on the fossil fuel industry, the dishonest narrative that we are not the cleanest large energy producers in the world, the damage that's been done to the economy, the damage that's been done to the way that American people live their lives. And what are they doing? They're bragging about the pain that they're caused. The more pain, the better, they're saying. That's what the president has said. Hey, we're halfway through a transition. If we could just get through to the other side, it's going to be so much better. You know, as you said, in candy land and unicorn land, we're going to have all these jobs and all this prosperity because we went through all this pain. But the fact is, the fossil fuel industry has been used to bring more prosperity to third world countries than any other development in history, in industrial history. This assault on our freedoms, our economic freedoms, our health care freedoms, as you mentioned, with whether it's the mask, whether it's the vaccines, our individual freedoms with the Second Amendment assault, this body is going to try to pass 2 more bills to take away and restrict Second Amendment rights. That's going to happen in this House, we're told. The continued assault on the Second Amendment right. You know, I have right here, I don't do this very often, but I've got some quotes from the founders as it relates to the Second Amendment right. And as I was looking for quotes, you know, I couldn't find anything that talked about that the people could keep and bear arms so they could target practice. The people could keep and bear arms so they could hunt. The people could keep and bear arms for sporting purposes. These quotes that I have here from the founders explaining why they wrote into the Constitution the Second Amendment as they did was to ensure we remain free. Freedom has a cost. Most of the world does not live free to the extent that we still live free, as you often enunciate. You know, whether the majority of this Congress likes it or not, we have a Constitution. I happen to like it. I know you do as well. And the framers, in their wisdom, made it possible to change the Constitution, but they made it difficult by design. They said, hey, if you want to change the Constitution, you've got to have super majorities of both houses. You've got to have super majorities of the states, legislatures, in order to bring transformational change to the country and amend the Constitution. But instead, they want to undermine the Constitution, undermine our freedoms, and attack the rights guaranteed to Americans in our Constitution.
Oh, I asked of the chair how much time we have left.
The gentleman has 5 minutes remaining.
All right, I thank the speaker. I would just add to my friend from Virginia a great quote from Thomas Jefferson. As he knows, I went to the University of Virginia. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. That is the purpose of the Second Amendment, and that is what we know. And I would note that in this context, and I'll yield another couple minutes to the gentleman if he wants it, when we're talking about the response, it's my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they break our border purposely, and then they want us to fix it with amnesty or with some policies to say that Texas has to just accept. And I hear that the mayor of New York is all aghast that people are being dropped off in New York. He says, we need federal government help to deal with it. I'm like, welcome to the party, pal. This is what life's like in South Texas every single day. They break it. They break the border, and then they want you, the American people, to have to carry the water. They break the Defense Department, drive recruiting down to 40%, then they put in language to draft our daughters, all in the name of so-called equity and equality. They break our criminal justice system. They break the backs of our law enforcement community. Then they say, we're going to take your guns, your ability to defend yourself. They break the energy system in our country. Then they say, just go buy a Tesla. What's wrong with you?
$70,000.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
What's wrong with you? Go buy a Tesla. You can plug in. You go drive through West Texas, 300 miles. Don't worry about it. Stop off in Eden, Texas, where I no doubt they have a charging station, and spend $70,000 for the pleasure. They break the back of the economy, drive up inflation, and they say, suck it up, buttercup. Go buy yourself some expensive chicken and rice. They break the back of this body, this institution, and they ignore their colleagues when their colleagues are saying the chickens are going to come home to roost. That's the reality of what we're dealing with, a purposeful breaking the back of this country and a tearing apart of the threads that hold us together. And I'm going to just say it here on the floor. If we don't start respecting federalism, the ability to agree to disagree, then this country is doomed. It will break apart under its own weight. And it will be my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that amass the weight that will break the bow. And that is where we're headed. If we don't start respecting the ability of individuals in this country to agree to disagree, allow Texans to be Texans, Californians to be Californians, unite under the flag of the United States, under our core principles, but stop shredding our ability to disagree. Stop breaking this country and forcing the American people to buy it, and I'll yield the balance of the time to my friend from Virginia.
Well said to the gentleman from Texas. Their solution, this president's solution, this majority solution to the economic wreckage they have created is to spend more money. And you just ask yourself, you're baffled, is it malicious intent and they recognize the harm that they're doing and how they're causing the harm, and they're doing it by design, they're doing it on purpose, or are they that economically illiterate and they really are clueless and have no idea what they're doing? Because you've got the record inflation, 40-year high inflation of 9%, which essentially means every American is working for 1 month free this year. 1 month out of the year, they're essentially not getting paid with the loss purchasing power they've experienced because of the inflation. And so what is their answer to that? Well, if we could just spend more money, if we could just get more of our agenda passed and spend trillions of dollars more, then that will help the problem rather than make it worse. It's like the person who says, hey, I'm trying to lose weight, and then they would say, well, the solution is to eat more. That is the solution that they propose, to do more harm, and you just wonder, is it just that illiterate, that ignorant, or is it willful and devious and malicious? And I yield back.
I think, gentleman from Virginia, I think our time has expired, and I appreciate the speaker and the staff here tonight.
Gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair and not to a perceived viewing audience.